Picture a typical airport scene. You're moving through the security line on autopilot, removing your shoes and belt, placing electronics into a tray. As you walk through the scanner, you might feel a hint of nervousness, despite having nothing to hide. But what truly goes on when you're not looking? How is it that certain travelers are singled out for extra checks, while others breeze through? What do those mysterious markings on your ticket actually mean? The situation grows more troubling when you consider that those entrusted with enforcing security have sometimes broken the public's trust. Incidents have been documented, such as at Miami International Airport, where screeners were filmed taking money and valuables from luggage. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Here are 17 insights into airport screening that aren't widely discussed, from overlooked vulnerabilities in the system to puzzling guidelines that may undermine trust. What you discover could reshape your view of travel security. To begin, it's important to understand one key fact: screeners have far less authority than many passengers assume. Let's be clear, while agents may project an air of total control, they are not law enforcement officers. Their jurisdiction is specific and limited. They can verify your documents, inspect your belongings, and direct you through checkpoints with an authoritative demeanor. However, their powers are not without boundaries, a detail that holds significant implications. It's important to recognize the boundaries of their authority. They cannot legally force you to unlock your phone or divulge your laptop password, meaning you have the right to refuse a search of your personal devices. Your passport should also stay with you rather than being placed in a bin. Crucially, these agents do not have the power to arrest. If they suspect an issue, they must contact airport police. If faced with an overzealous agent, staying calm and asking whether an action is a requirement or merely a request can clarify the situation, as they often adjust their approach when they realize you know your rights. If they persist, a patient, non-confrontational stance is advisable. Remember, their role is to conduct screenings, not to use excessive force. A pat-down should not be aggressive, and you are entitled to communicate any medical conditions or areas of sensitivity so they proceed with appropriate care. Consider this incident: a passenger informed a female TSA agent that applying pressure to her lower abdomen would cause significant pain. Before the agent could reply, a male supervisor interjected, stating she would use whatever pressure she deemed necessary. The traveler firmly countered, asserting that the agent was not permitted to cause her physical injury. Immediately, the supervisor retreated. The agent, now proceeding with clear caution, asked if she could use a light touch, and the screening was completed without issue. This reflects a broader problem highlighted in reports, such as one from the Los Angeles Times, where a passenger described feeling physically manhandled and disrespected during a screening, casting serious doubt on the consistency of TSA conduct. While most agents follow protocol, deviations do occur, and the burden often falls on the passenger to assert their rights. If a pat-down becomes uncomfortable or aggressive, it is important to speak up. Your authority in this situation is greater than it may appear. This leads to a lesser-known but official aspect of TSA policy: airport security protocols are not universally rigid. They can shift without warning due to fluctuating threat levels, specific airport directives, and the individual judgment of officers. The TSA itself acknowledges that security measures are adaptable and that screeners possess the discretion to modify procedures based on ongoing risk evaluation. In short, the regulations enforced at one airport may differ from those at another, and even within the same terminal, an item permitted on a morning flight could be confiscated before an evening departure. This variation isn't personal or necessarily a sign of error, it's an intentional part of the security design. The built-in flexibility aims to keep potential threats uncertain, but for regular passengers, it can create a sense of confusion, inconsistency, and a feeling of unpredictable chance. Therefore, when a security procedure seems arbitrary, it may not be random at all but a calculated move within the TSA's constantly adapting protocols. During screening, you are also being evaluated alongside your belongings. Officers are trained in behavioral observation techniques, watching for subtle cues in body language that may seem unusual. Simple actions like sweating, fidgeting, or avoiding eye contact can draw their focus, which can seem unfair since feeling nervous is a common reaction to the pressures of long lines, loud equipment, and the worry of having forgotten an item in a pocket. This tension is enough to unsettle anyone, so as you wait in line, remember the scrutiny extends beyond your belongings to you personally. Surprisingly, displaying heightened emotions can itself trigger additional checks, as one passenger experienced after an emotional farewell in Greece. Despite no alarms or suspicious items, she was singled out because agents interpreted her visible distress as a potential indicator of trafficking or smuggling. While officers eventually cleared her, the incident shows that appearing anxious, tearful, or overly tense can draw targeted attention even when you are entirely innocent. If you're feeling emotional before a flight, it may be wise to compose yourself to avoid this extra focus, unless you welcome the added inspection. This principle even applies to seemingly minor details, like markings on your boarding pass. While most scribbles are harmless initials, if you notice the letters SSS, prepare for a significant change in plans, as this code designates you for mandatory secondary screening. This extra attention means the complete procedure, a thorough pat-down, an exhaustive inspection of all your luggage, and a guaranteed delay as you receive their focused examination. The catch is, you typically won't realize you've been selected until the moment it happens. 1 minute you're walking toward your gate, and the next you're being escorted aside for what is presented as a routine check that quickly proves to be anything but. A practical tip for travelers is to always glance at your returned boarding pass after it's scanned. Should you spot those 4 letters, mentally prepare, your journey through the airport is officially going to take more time. Screeners are not particularly celebrated for their sense of humor, especially when the joke targets their procedures, as one passenger learned. While in the security line, he noticed a woman with a cat in a carrier and, upon hearing she needed to remove the animal for screening, quipped, "What are you going to do? Give it a CAT scan?" The line around him laughed, but the TSA officers did not. On his next 3 consecutive flights, he found himself consistently, and seemingly coincidentally, chosen for additional, in-depth baggage searches. While this might be dismissed as mere coincidence, it strongly suggests that the screeners were not amused by his humor. A prudent piece of advice is to save any witty remarks until you are well past the checkpoint, unless you are prepared for the heightened attention of secondary screening. Officially, TSA agents are positioned as dedicated professionals safeguarding public safety, but that reputation was severely compromised in 2019. An investigation revealed a private Facebook community with over 18,000 members, all TSA employees, who were sharing demeaning images and jokes about passengers, a clear violation of their ethical standards. This was not a minor incident involving a few individuals, but a widespread culture of disrespect with thousands participating. One would anticipate immediate and severe consequences from an agency reliant on public confidence, yet the majority of those involved faced no significant discipline and retained their positions and authority. In another startling revelation, the full-body scanners used prior to 2013 did more than detect threats. They provided screeners with detailed, revealing images of every passenger's body. The public reaction to this intrusive technology was, unsurprisingly, one of significant outrage, prompting the obvious question of who approved such a system in the first place. Faced with a strong backlash, the TSA was compelled to implement a new, less revealing scanner that now displays only a generic human outline rather than explicit details. The mere existence of the original system, however, naturally leads one to question what other concerning practices might have gone unnoticed. If you've ever had an item go missing after security screening, you should know the TSA's default position is one of non-responsibility. Whether it's a cracked laptop, a damaged suitcase, or headphones that have vanished, the official line is that it is not their problem. While a formal claim process for lost or damaged property exists, it is notoriously cumbersome and ineffective, with many travelers reporting that their cases languish for months only to be rejected or met with a disappointingly small settlement. Securing compensation, even with clear evidence, feels more like a rare exception than a standard outcome. This issue is compounded by incidents of outright theft by agents themselves, as evidenced by security footage from Miami International Airport obtained by NBC News, which showed officers stealing cash from luggage. Similar reports from outlets like CNN detail employees being fired for theft at major airports including Orlando, JFK, and LAX, with passengers losing items ranging from watches to electronics. It is a sobering reminder that the presence of an intact, TSA-approved lock on your bag is no guarantee that its contents haven't been tampered with. You should always assume your checked luggage will be opened, as every bag undergoes screening and agents have full authority to inspect any that draw suspicion. This includes cutting locks and opening sealed wrappings, a process applied to roughly 5% of all checked bags. While this is a standard security measure, it introduces a significant point of vulnerability. Following a search, a TSA notice is supposed to be placed inside your suitcase. However, numerous travelers report missing items precisely when no such notification is present. This troubling discrepancy forces a critical question: if the TSA didn't perform the search, who else had access to your belongings? The practical conclusion is clear: never pack valuables or irreplaceable items in checked luggage, keep them securely in your carry-on. Manage your expectations regarding accountability, as obtaining reimbursement from the TSA for losses is notoriously difficult. If you do encounter a problem, meticulously document the issue, file a claim promptly, and be prepared to negotiate, as their initial settlement offer is often insufficient. Ultimately, if you find your lock broken without an accompanying inspection note, it is a strong indicator that your bag was compromised by someone other than a screening officer. This reality is far from comforting, so proactive steps are essential to safeguard your belongings. First, always use a TSA-approved lock, which screeners can open with a master key, but which still deters unauthorized access. The most critical rule, however, is to never place valuables in checked luggage. All important items should remain in your carry-on bag under your direct supervision. A useful strategy is to take a photograph of your suitcase before you hand it over, providing clear evidence of its prior condition if it arrives damaged. Should an item go missing or get broken, report it right away. Filing a claim immediately improves the likelihood of some form of compensation. The fundamental advice is to operate under the assumption that your checked bag is not fully secure, a realistic perspective given the hectic environment of baggage handling, crowded carousels, and multiple points of potential exposure where items can easily disappear without immediate notice. To prevent your possessions from getting lost in the chaos, keep them secured until the final moment. Before joining the security queue, place essentials like your wallet, phone, and keys securely inside your carry-on. The key to minimizing risk is reducing the number of loose items in the security bins, as each separate piece is an opportunity for loss or theft. For better organization and security, consolidate all pocket contents into a sealable plastic bag placed inside your carry-on before screening. This creates a single, easy-to-retrieve package and prevents a frantic scramble to gather belongings. When traveling with a companion, use a simple strategy. Have one person go through the scanner first to monitor the bins from the other side while the second person follows. Solo travelers can adapt by sending lower-value items like shoes and liquids through first, saving their most important possessions, like a wallet and laptop, for the very last bin to limit their time unattended. The essential rule remains: if an item can fit in your carry-on, it should stay there. Valuables should never travel solo in a tray, as keeping everything consolidated reduces hassle, lowers risk, and creates a smoother process. This principle of minimizing exposure also applies when dealing with difficult interactions. If you encounter a TSA agent who is unnecessarily rude or aggressive, understand that the path to formal accountability is extremely limited. Once an agent completes their initial 2-year probationary period, they gain substantial job protection. These interactions, unless they escalate into clear misconduct, are generally treated as a routine part of the operation, with serious consequences like termination reserved almost exclusively for illegal acts, and even that outcome isn't guaranteed. It's important to acknowledge that most agents are simply performing their duties, yet the system's robust protections can unfortunately allow the occasional individual with an overly authoritarian demeanor to remain in their role indefinitely. While many TSA regulations are sensible and necessary for safety, others defy straightforward logic, such as the rule requiring the disposal of a single large bottle of shampoo over 100 milliliters while permitting multiple smaller bottles with the same total volume. Similarly, the selection for enhanced pat-downs can feel arbitrarily inconsistent. This naturally leads to the question of whether every procedure is genuinely driven by security needs or if passengers are simply participants in a high-stakes, unpredictable routine. I'm sure you have your own experiences to share. Feel free to post your most surprising or absurd TSA encounter in the comments. Let's compare who has navigated the most unusual security scenario. The familiar airport security theater, removing shoes, separating electronics, and holding an awkward stance in a scanner, is all promoted as essential for safety. However, its effectiveness is questionable. In a 2015 Homeland Security investigation, undercover agents conducted 70 tests at various airports, and TSA screeners failed to detect prohibited items like weapons and explosives in 67 of them, a 95% failure rate that included missing a mock explosive device strapped to an agent's back. This performance did not significantly improve, as evidenced by a 2017 incident where 11 passengers at JFK Airport bypassed all screening entirely, reaching their departure gates unnoticed, with the TSA's response being to screen them upon landing. That same year, a dozen TSA agents were arrested for allegedly using their positions to smuggle cocaine from Puerto Rico, casting further doubt on the system's integrity, especially when juxtaposed with the strict confiscation of passenger items like oversized toiletries. This inconsistency raises concerns about the rigor of the agency's own vetting. During its rapid initial hiring phase in the early 2000s to fill over 55,000 screener positions quickly, the depth and consistency of employee background checks became a point of scrutiny, suggesting that the people entrusted with our security may not have undergone the level of scrutiny the public would assume. In their initial push to rapidly staff airports after September 11, the agency expedited hiring for over 55,000 screeners, which led to nearly 28,000 employees being on board without completed background investigations. This haste had serious consequences, as 1,200 of those hires were later terminated for failing to meet basic eligibility standards. Among them were over 500 individuals with prior arrests or convictions, including 85 with felony records. Hardly the ideal candidates for securing air travel. The problems persisted years later. In 2015, it was reported that the agency had inadvertently authorized 73 individuals on the terror watch list to work in sensitive airport areas. This stark failure in vetting was compounded by revelations from an FBI expert that year, who noted that once aviation workers passed their initial check, their criminal records were not routinely re-examined, and they enjoyed the perk of bypassing passenger security checkpoints altogether. While policies have since been strengthened, including mandatory recurrent background checks every 2 years, these reforms arrived well after the fact. Given this history, one might assume the agency's only focus is on stringent enforcement. However, they occasionally display a lighter side, as seen on their official social media accounts, which showcase a bizarre catalog of items passengers have attempted to carry onto planes, including martial arts weapons, bladed items, and improbably, a live bird of prey and even a frozen holiday turkey. The reality is that the vast majority of screeners are simply everyday individuals fulfilling their assigned duties. They are not the policymakers but the frontline personnel tasked with implementing the regulations, often while managing long lines of frustrated passengers. So, while you may occasionally encounter an agent who appears overly rigid, it's important to remember that most are not motivated by a desire for authority but by the requirements of their role. To ensure the smoothest possible experience, your best approach is to adhere to the guidelines, remain patient, and avoid becoming the passenger who delays everyone. For further advice on navigating airports and travel efficiently, consider subscribing for more insights. Wishing you safe journeys, and I look forward to sharing more in the next installment.